Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Is Spooky Mysteries. I'm your host, Joe Rios, and that beautiful music is what's going to bring us into our topic today, which is going to be Dia de los Muertos. As of this recording, it is day one. It's November 1st. Tomorrow is November 2nd, and that wraps up Dia de los Muertos. So, we're going to go over what everything means, what all the days mean leading up to it, its history, its background, and everything. And lately on Instagram, TikTok, everywhere, right? There's been a lot of talk about it because people have started to add their own personal twist to it. They've been adding, let's say, pets, which is fine. It's your loved ones. It's a pet is perfectly fine. Some people have added celebrities. People have been adding celebrities since the beginning of time. Anyone that they've idolized or admired has been added to an ofrenda. I guarantee you, Vicente Fernandez has probably been on my mom's ofrenda more than once. And people are getting upset because, what's his name? The guy from One Direction, if I believe his name, Liam, recently passed away. And people have been getting upset because they've been making an ofrenda and having his picture on it, which is perfectly fine. People put whoever they want. Granted, it's supposed to be a loved one, a family, a friend, what have you, but there's nothing that strictly says it has to. Like, and I know I'm going to reference the movie Coco, which is fine, but I know people are going to have an issue with that because Disney romanticized the concept of Dia de los Muertos. We'll get into that too. And it's not an authentic, 100% capture of what it is, but it's close enough, right? It's what got a lot of people interested into it now. So I thought I'd delve into that, talk about it a little bit, give y'all its history, everything that goes along with it as much as I can. Because honestly, at the end of the day, Dia de los Muertos is not just a holiday for Mexicans. Camera's not focusing. There it goes. Dia de los Muertos is a holiday for everybody and anybody. It's marks the time of change when it goes from summer's over and it's now fall. Throughout history, it's always been this time of year that celebrations have happened to mark the solstice when the harvest came in and all this. Every civilization in history has done this. And it just so happens that this is also the time that every civilization that I've ever been able to read about this is their day to mourn. This is their day to accept mortality. This is also the day that they say that the veil between our realm and the other side is the thinnest. Every culture has it and every culture says it. So why is Dia de los Muertos such a touchy subject? There's a lot of I can't say creators because a lot of creators are just saying do it respectfully. But there's a lot of people on Instagram and TikTok that are like, don't colonize the holiday and all this other crap. But no, it started off as a very basic tradition by the Aztecs and the Maya and the Mexica, whatever you want to call them, right? The indigenous people of Mexico. And then it did get colonized, which is what we have today. I mean, that's why I'm like, it's everybody's holiday. I don't know why people were upset about that. And one creator on TikTok was like, it was, all the indigenous people, the Native Americans, the Mexicans, everybody did blah, 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 right? Put it all together. No. Hold on a second. Granted, all civilizations, like I said, have a version or a celebration of it. In Mexico, it's called Dia de los Muertos. In Brazil, All Saints Day. In Haiti, I believe it's also All Saints Day or All Souls Day. Every culture calls it differently. It's not just Dia de los Muertos. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk all about it. It's just one of those things that irks me a little bit. And you know how I get when that happens. I've been doing research for a week straight on this because I wanted to get as much as I can. And I consolidated it to as much as I can to where it still makes sense because as I'm typing everything out, I tend to ramble in my typings. I start going off a beaten trail because I'll find a path like, okay, this is part of the tradition, and then I'll start delving off into it. And you'll notice it in the episode today, because I talk about one thing and then I end up in like Celtic lore, and I end up, I always end up somewhere else, because it's not just us as Mexicans. It is everybody. And why is my logo way out here? I'm sorry, I get distracted very easy. ADD is a big pain in my ass. Okay, cool. That's just where it wants to put it. Okay, cool. I'll leave it over there. Not going to touch it. But anyways, it's one of those things that once I get into it, I want to figure it out. And I want everyone to celebrate all holidays. It doesn't matter who you are, Catholic, Christian, you still pray to the old gods, whether it be Celtic lore, Nordic, Mexicas, whatever, right? Be respectful and follow those traditions. If you want to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, follow the basic ground rules that we have. And I say we, and when I say we, I mean as a cultural community, as the Mexicans, the Native Americans, whatever celebrates Dia de los Muertos or All Souls Day, just follow the basic rules that we have set up for that. And if I want to celebrate Diwali, which is happening right now too, started on Christmas. All the Christmas stuff is going up and it's been getting on my nerves. That's a whole nother story. It started on Halloween. If I were to do that, I would do all my research. I'd talk to all my friends that I know that celebrate it, and I'd get their opinion, and I'd do whatever I could to keep with their traditions. Like I said, keep it respectful, and you can celebrate whatever you want. Granted, like celebrate whatever you want within reason. Don't go. That's a whole nother path, because some people radicalize things too. And radicalization of holidays and faith, that leads to a lot of trouble. Not going to touch that subject today. But yeah, so let's get into it. And like I said, as of this recording, it is November 1st. Tomorrow's November 2nd. So don't think of this as the Dia de los Muertos episode that's for that day. Think of it as a guide for next year. I want y'all to think about this next year. Pull this up next year. Listen to it and take your notes. Or follow me on Instagram, TikTok, if TikTok's still around, because supposedly it's supposed to go away January 5th, right? So I got some time. I saved the videos. But I'm also going to be posting it to Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, backups, scoops, Twitch also, because they got a post thing now. I'm going to post all that stuff there. Think about me a year from now. And if you want to celebrate it, I will put up the tips on how to stay respectful and within alignment to the traditions. And if I were to ever celebrate anything else, trust me, I follow those steps. I don't just say do this and then I go out and make my own version of whatever holiday, right? I don't, because that's not respectful. I want to keep it respectful, and I want y'all to do the same thing. So I've been rambling for about 10 minutes, right? Let's start off with this. I got my script up too, everything right here. Bam. I got some news at the end of the episode. We'll talk about that at the end, because I'm switching things up next year. So I got 2 more months of figuring this out. So let's begin. With Halloween behind us, the 1st of November. Let's start that over again, because I butchered that. Mark this down so I can delete that later. With Halloween behind us, the 1st of November brings us Dia de los Muertos, a day to remember and honor those that have passed. We're going to delve deep into this holiday and what it truly means to the Hispanic culture and how it is celebrated. I've already covered something similar in the past, but that was just how others throughout the world celebrate it. So let's start off with the history of this holiday. Dia de los Muertos has its roots some 3,000 years back. The Aztec or the Mexica people viewed death instead of an end more as another part of life. To them, it was a part of the everyday. So the ancient people, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Mexica, whatever you want to call them, uh, indigenous people of Mexico, death wasn't the end. It was just a continuation that we couldn't see, that the living couldn't see, that they had to follow into the next world. It wasn't, Yes, people mourned. Everyone's going to mourn when they lose somebody, but it wasn't seen as that's it. It was seen as we'll see them later kind of situation. When someone died, they believed that the person's spirit traveled to the land of the dead, which is called, and I'm going to butcher this because y'all know my Nahuatl is not up to par, Ikunamiklan. Hey, that was a little bit better because I've been listening to it over and over again. There, the spirits would have to complete 9 trials that could last years to accomplish before reaching the final resting place of Mictlan. The Nahual, Mexica, or Aztec, whatever you want to call them. I know that's going to bother some people. Their rituals that they did to honor the dead happened in August around this time frame. It involved the family of the lost would bring food and supplies to aid them during these challenges or trials, which is where we get the tradition of bringing food to the ofrendas. Symbology was a big thing for the Aztecs. One of these symbols is the skull. The Aztecs used them in their rituals and as part of paying their respects for those that have passed. Today, we use sugar skulls with the same intent. The use of skulls has been around for 6 centuries. Sometimes in the 16th century, the Spanish conquered the Aztecs and moved the dates around to align with the closest holiday for the Catholics. They had, which is, or Christians, they had, which is All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day, which what we have now is November 1st and the 2nd. To assimilate better, they changed the name to Dia de los Muertos. So, when Mexico got invaded and taken over by the Spaniards, they moved things around. You know, they changed things to align better to them. And what better way to get a group of people to better assimilate into what you want them to do than to take their holiday, mix it with your holiday, and create something that you prefer that's more aligned with your needs while still holding some of their values, which is where we get a lot of our holidays from. Halloween, Christmas, those are all, they're not all original holidays. They were all something else in the past. And when other people came over, they said, hey, you're celebrating. I don't like who you're celebrating to, but I want you to be a part of my thing. So let's change it up a bit and make it more for me. And that's how we got holidays, you know? That's just how it happened. I hate to say it, but that's why I say Dia de los Muertos is not just for Mexicans. It was brought to us and changed and turned into Dia de los Muertos. If you really wanted to keep it to yourself, celebrate it in August. Like around that time frame, like the original people did. And that was is if I'm not mistaken, August is also around that time frame when the solstice is the first one, right? The equinox. I might be just talking at my butt, but who knows? I'm gonna look up. I have to look it up now because I don't want to just be talking stupid. I can't type. Let's see, so yeah, it's closer to the solstice, to the summer solstice. So yeah, happened in June and December. So, but it marks the time of change. It's not a solstice, but it is a mark of time of change. So, again, if you want to do it around that time. Don't do it now. If you want to gatekeep a holiday, stick to its roots. Then go celebrate it in August, around that time frame before it got turned into Dia de los Muertos. Because this is not your thing. Then, if you want to keep it to yourself, then guess what? Dia de los Muertos is not it. Take the original parts of this. So, in other words, take food, water, a skull, and go to where your loved ones are laid to rest in August and celebrate it then. Because if you're going to gatekeep, don't do it now. Because this isn't the original holiday. This is what was given to us. I'm sorry, I get so upset about this thing. It's just one of those things. The fusion of indigenous and Catholic practices is what gave us the different days and what they represent. With a mix of cultures, that brings us together. What is the difference between All Souls Day and Dia de los Muertos? With Europe blending pagan celebrations with Catholic ones brought us All Souls Day, since most countries, or most cultures, celebrated death at roughly the same time, which consisted of celebrations of feast and dancing and a bonfire, because it was to mark the harvest. The Spaniards' tradition was to bring wine and bread to their loved ones, and the bread they used is pan de animas, or soul bread. They would also decorate the graves with flowers and candles to guide the spirits home. Does that not sound familiar? And that was in Spain. In the 16th century, they brought this view with them to the New World, with a darker view due to the bubonic plague. So they didn't have the same view of death that we had. For Dia de los Muertos, the pre Hispanic people believed in a coexistence of life and death. They celebrated with painted pottery, monuments, and various rituals. So they went all out. There was pottery, there was not just monuments. When I said monuments, I meant like murals, things painted that depicted our celebrations, that depicted how we did things, and the various rituals that we had. Because it wasn't just a, I'm honoring somebody. No, I'm helping them in their mission to get to Mictlan. Those that celebrated were keeping the memories alive of those that have passed. It is believed that the dead are able to return home during these celebrations, which are in November 1st and the 2nd. To welcome them home, they laid out marigolds and lit incense to help guide them. Their beacon was the ofrendas or altars that they built. Depending on the culture, is what goes on the altar. The main items that go on the altar are marigolds, candles, photos of the deceased, and decorated cut tissue, papel picado, and food and drinks. The last is used as an offering to the dead, and it's usually their favorite item. So, in other words, whatever food and drink you're going to put out, it's going to be something they wanted, right? When they were alive. A main theme is skulls made out of clay, paper mache, or sugar, decorated with the names of the deceased written across the forehead. The calavera or Catrina, which is one of the most well-known images that is associated with Dia de los Muertos, was designed and painted by Jose Guadalupe Posada. Now, this is where things get tricky because, like I said, I find a rabbit hole and I just keep going. So it goes off the rails a little bit, right? This was painted as satire to the society of the times to illustrate the class habits. So this wasn't during the ancient times. This was further up. We skipped time here, right? We've moved along in time. We're not with the indigenous anymore. We're with Mexicans now. When Posada passed away, it was associated with Dia de los Muertos in 1913. The Catarina or Garbancera was originally a critique of those that looked up to the European bourgeois and disliked their own people. So in other words, they thought they were better than the rest of us because they were probably like light skinned. They probably blended in a lot better, right? They had more Spaniard and European blood than indigenous blood. They were designed to symbolize the rich and poor and what they had in common, which is death. Jose Posada's calaveras were part of an 8 octosyllabic poem. Jesus Christ. I wrote it and I never practiced saying it because I was like, oh, that's a big word. I got this. I'm smart. Obviously, I don't. And one of the poems went like this: Adelante el carnicero, en la mano su morcón, más allá el te llevan al prisión. Más corriendo queda, más corriendo que te queda, más corriendo quede prisa. Jesus Christ, I couldn't say that. Y te volvió la ceniza. El horno de cremación. My Spanish started tricking out at the last part. So that's, that was the poem, and I didn't translate it, but I can translate it real fast. So it says, forward the butcher. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to translate it because my Spanish. But it's basically saying that, like, a butcher, a millionaire, you're going to end up in the same spot. Doesn't matter who you are. You go to prison, you go running around, you try to beat death, you're never going to beat it. You're going to end up cremated, you're going to end up as dust, you're going to end up in the ground, no matter what. That's about it, right? That's the gist of it. This is going to be a little bit all over the place, so let's talk more about the political aspect of the Catrina during the early 20th century. These images were printed as a way to mock the political parties of the time. It was used as a way to mock those that have idolized a European style. The original pamphlet that had the original La Catarina, 1911, said, this one's in English, those garbanzos who today are coated with makeup will end up as a deformed skull. So in other words, no matter what, you're going to be a skull. She became the public face of Dia de los Muertos in 1947 when Diego Rivera placed her in a full gown at the center of his mural, marking the end of Mexico's Revolutionary War. Her elegant clothes were meant to portray a mocking tone, with her smile coming through from within her pompous appearance. It was a way to remind those who saw her to accept the common destiny of mortality. Dia de los Muertos is often thought of as Mexico's version of Halloween by most people in the States. So over here in Texas, California, Nevada, growing up, that's all I ever heard was that it was, Mexico's version of Halloween. And growing up as an Osabo kid, hey, I kind of believed it. This is not true. It's a celebration of death. Most cultures have a similar belief. The origins of Halloween started as a Celtic celebration marking the end of the harvest. Also, at this time, it was believed that the veil between the living and the dead was the thinnest, which allowed the living to interact with them. As to dressing up, part of that was due to the belief that this is when monsters and fairies were able to kidnap people more readily. So, Celtic belief was that at this time, things from the other side could take you. And how do you avoid that? You dress up like them and you scare them off. So they dressed up as animals and monsters to scare and confuse them. Halloween was used as a way to mark a harvest, as Dia de los Muertos was a marking and celebration of life and death. It was not widespread to most of Mexico. My family is from the northern parts of Mexico, and growing up, I didn't really see too much of the celebration, only what I saw on TV. Over time, what has made it more widespread was due to museums and schools using this as a way to teach children the culture and the significance that it represents. The main way that was used to teach children was papel picado, which is cut tissue paper. This represented the wind helping souls find their way home. There's a lot of information. I went through a lot for this. During the 70s, the Chicano movement made a public altar and art exhibits depicting Mexican heritage as a way to protest discrimination. Then in the 80s, it was used again for the victims of the AIDS epidemic. Then in 1985, altars were set up for the thousands of people lost during the earthquake in Mexico. The most recent one to solidify Dia de los Muertos was in 2015 in El Paso, Texas, where 22 Latinos were killed in a Walmart. The part that helps drive it becoming more than just a Mexican holiday is that it opens up a way to communicate the thing that everyone has in common, our own mortality. The altars connect as one and give us a way to mourn those that we have lost in a more joyful way by remembering them with food, music, and drinks, making it a celebration of life instead of a mournful day of death. It was added as a UNESCO Heritage Holiday in 2008 as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Listen to that. Intangible cultural heritage of humanity, not of Mexicans, not of the Spaniards, not of Latinos, but of humanity. Because it's recognized that every culture had a version of this. With media also picking it up with movies and on TV. One of the times I saw it was growing up was from a movie in 1996 with it was called The Crow, City of Angels. There's a scene where they're walking through a parade for Dia de los Muertos. Then in 2015 with the James Bond movie Spectre, which featured a Dia de los Muertos parade. The following year after that, Mexico held its first parade for the day. Also, some cities held its first parade for the day. Also, some cities in the U.S. also celebrated with notable cities like Chicago, San Antonio, Los Angeles, and Fort Lauderdale. That same year, Disney came out with a hit movie called Coco. This was a $175 million homage to the holiday. The only downside to Disney doing this was that they tried to copyright the holiday. They try to take it as their own. You can't take a holiday, right? I can't say that. Look at Coca-Cola. They got Christmas. Don't come after me. Coca-Cola is a big company. They could knock me down forever. The holiday has evolved since its beginning. The only thing that has remained a constant is the heart of the holiday, which is the celebration of life and death, marking not only an end but a new beginning. Death is a natural part of life that should not be shrouded in mystery or seen as a bad thing. It can be a positive depending on your beliefs. The holiday is meant to be shared the world over, and all its cultures have long celebrated roughly the same time as a marking of change when the veil between the two worlds becomes one. So I've said this many times. I keep going over the same thing, right? Because I'm trying to drive this home that every culture in history had something similar. We are all one people in this. I know the podcast Spooky Mysteries is dedicated to Latinos, is our spooky mysteries from the Latino community, stories we grew up with, and true crime from the Hispanic community. But this is not just a Hispanic holiday. This is an everyone holiday, which is why I felt I had to do this. So let's recap. I've covered its history, its meaning, similarities across the world, and when it became a more embraced holiday for the majority of the world. So let's dig into the more festive parts of the holiday and what the new days leading up to Dia de los Muertos means. In most cities, it's marked with a parade and a giant ofrenda made by the city to honor those lost. I know where I live now, here in Arlington. The cemetery down the street has signs marking the day and asking locals to come over and celebrate with marigolds and calaveritas all over the place. So, yeah, as I was driving by, there's a big sign and everything. People are pretty much there right now. Tomorrow, too. I think tomorrow. With the parade, there's usually some type of party that's not necessarily part of it, but that's the city that does that. They're trying to get people going, right? Loved ones then go to the cemetery where they bring food, drinks, flowers, and music to their loved ones, where they are the honored guests. Or if they are unable to go to the graveyard, that's where the ofrendas or altars at home come into play, with the marigolds acting like a beacon calling home the loved ones. These altars are decorated similarly, usually adding candles. What makes an ofrenda or altar? The ofrenda needs four crucial elements, and those elements are the four elements: earth, wind, water, fire, and heart. I had to make a Captain Planet reference. I had to. But seriously, it's the four elements. It's earth, wind, water, fire. The way this is done is by leaving a pitcher of water for the souls to quench their thirst. This represents, obviously, water. Air is represented by papel picado, which acts like a symbol that they have arrived. So when the papel picado moves, that means they're here with you. Earth is represented by food, especially bread, which is where we get pan de muertos from. Pan de muertos is believed to have originated during the times of human sacrifices, transformed to bread by the Spaniards due to them rejecting the traditional ceremonies of the Aztecs or Mexica. So, pan de muertos is a piece of bread that was originally in the shape of a heart, and it represented the sacrifice, right? The Spaniards were like, we're not sacrificing people. How about we make some bread that looks like it? Catholics in their bread, the body of Christ. And now this, I'm sorry, it just came to me right now that there's just so much in the bread. Probably why I like bread so much. They made bread in the shape of hearts dipped in sugar and painted red to represent the blood of a maiden. This is how they kept the origins alive of the human sacrifices, thus creating pan de muertos, or bread of the dead. Now, the bread itself has meaning, with its circular shape representing the life cycle. The top of the bread has a little hole at the top, little indentation, and that represents a skull surrounded by canelillas. I probably butchered that. Canillas. Canillas? I don't know. Which are the four which represent bones and tears shed by those that are no longer with us. So it's not us that should be sad, it's them that should be sad because they can't communicate with us except for 2 days out of the year. That's just one style. That's just what one style looks like and represents. There's bread that's regional and for different things like animals. There's different breads for different people, right? Okay, so let's get back to the ofrendas. Finally, candles for fire, usually in the shape of a cross to represent the cardinal directions to guide the souls. Again, this is just one way of doing this depending on where in Mexico you are and depending on how the ofrenda is set up. In some areas, it's a flat spot with all four elements, so it's just like a flat table, everything down. In some areas, it's a tiered style. The tiered style is done most commonly in three levels, each each representing heaven, earth, and the underworld. If you want to get fancy, then you can go up to 7. To decorate them, you will have all the items listed above while adding cempasúchil. I butchered that, marigolds. Flowers, or as they are more commonly known as marigolds. Why this flower? That's because this time of year is when they are more steadily available. It is said that their smell will attract the souls. So we have their favorite food, candles in the shape of a compass, and now flowers with a smell that brings the souls to the land of the living, which is what it represents, and which is what it represented in Coco too. So that's a lot of beacons home to see your loved ones once again for a night. Before I forget, there's also incense or copal, which comes from a Nahuatl word copali or copai. This type of incense purifies the area, allowing the spirits to enter with no harm. The way the indigenous people used it was by offering it to the 4 cardinal points and to the sun in gratitude for that year's harvest. Regionally, some people may also add sand style paintings called tapetes de arena, tapestries of sand, this or carpets of sand. This was brought to us by the Spaniards that used it during Good Friday to depict the resurrection of Jesus. We use it as a way to depict death in a playful manner. Symbols play a big part of this tradition, and the biggest one is none other than the monarch butterfly. It represents change. Why? Because they arrive in Mexico for the winter November 1st. So around this time of year is when the monarchs show up. And that's a change. So the monarchs come in, so the indigenous people saw that as the spirits coming home. Because again, the monarch butterfly plays a big role in the Aztec, Mayan, Mexica, and their traditions. That's actually one of the gods, the shape of one of the gods, if I'm not mistaken, because there's the obsidian butterfly. I'll get into all that stuff later at a later date, but because I've done so much research on this stuff. And the way my brain works in ADHD and ADD or whatever I got, it just combines everything. So as I'm talking to y'all, my mind's making all these connections, and I'm like, and I got to spit it out, or else I'll be going insane. Okay. There's another animal that I believe plays an even bigger part of this tradition. El solo I know this word. I don't know why I'm trying to. El Cholo Squinkle, or Cholo dogs. This is Mexico's oldest breed of dog with roots dating back to the Aztec. They are said to guide souls across oh my God, across the Chiconahuapan River to reach the underworld. The tradition was that a cholo would be buried with the dead so that it would guide them safely. Nowadays, you can place a ceramic or a picture of a cholo dog, and that'll be good enough. No more sacrifices. So you don't have to bury a dog with them. You can just put a picture of a dog. And if you don't know what a cholo dog looks like, again, think of the movie Coco. Dante, that little weird, derpy looking dog, that's a cholo squinkle. Now, if you want to know why they look like that, when they're young, they look very regal, very like Anubis from Egyptian cultures. That's what they look like. They got that very regal look. But due to their genetic makeup, they tend to lose their teeth at the bottom, so they always end up with their teeth out, like Dante from the movie Coco. He's there. That's what they end up looking like. I love dogs. I've done research on that, and I want one. And I was reading as like, I don't want a derpy one. I want the regal looking one. And I was reading into it, and it's like a lot of them end up like that because of their genetic makeup. Because it's one of the oldest breeds. It's just one thing that's not wrong with them, but just one thing that they have. Sorry, again, I know a lot of stuff. So then there's the mystical alebrijes. That was also in the movie. These are our versions of dragons and other creatures of that type. So you know how in Europe they had dragons, fairies, and then in the States you got Bigfoot, skunk ape, the creatures in the Appalachian, and in other countries you got dragons and all that other stuff, right? Well, our version of that is alebrijes. And it's almost like the same thing, except ours are just colorful. That's different. Like you see these on my shirt, like that's a fish, because this is a fishing shirt, but it's a Day of the Dead fishing shirt. But like something like this could be an alebrije, you know? Do I have any other ones, or is it just one big fish? Oh no, right here, the little hummingbird. That's an alebrije because of its design. That's just how it is. It's our creatures are not that different. They're just colorful. That's it. And the hummingbird is also an important part of that culture. Anyways, with the key difference being that they are just colorful and vibrant. Unlike in the movie Coco, they are not our personal spirit guides, nor do they represent. No, they represent the beauty and magic of the other side. No two are ever alike. So, in the movie Coco, they each had like their own, right? But that's not how it generally is. But I'll get into that a little bit more up ahead. But they're usually just there as basically you're crossing over to the other side and you see magic. That's it. That's what they're there for. They're there to represent the beauty on the other side of the veil. Alebrijes are part of the tradition. The indigenous people did have a version of this called tonas, Tona. Again, regionally, it can mean different things to different people. The Zapotecs did have a version that was a spirit guide that was assigned to you when you were born, kind of like a zodiac symbol. Their calendar went in rounds of 13 divided by 20 days. The animals are coyotes, lizards, armadillos, turtles, snakes, rabbits, deers, frogs, monkeys, owls, eagles, jaguars, butterflies, fish, hummingbirds, and snails. Man, if you're listening to this and you just hear me rattling off names and you don't know what's going on, just rattling off names. Side note, they also have their own skinwalkers, which are shaman or medicine men that can transform into certain animals. So our curanderos and shaman and medicine men are the same as the skinwalkers. So depending on what mythology you're looking into, skinwalkers are not always just like a creature, an evil entity. No, it's originally from a lot of research I've done a long time ago when I was growing up. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I will gladly admit it. Y'all can call me out on it too, because if there's one person that watched one of my or listened to one of my podcasts on YouTube, they left a note saying that, hey, this was about the mom that hunted down the cartel members and took them out. They're like, no, she didn't die at home. She died in the streets. And I was like, let me double check. And if I'm wrong, I'll go back and correct it. So I did all my research and I wasn't wrong, but but they weren't wrong either. So there was a similar situation that happened again, but it was another mother who was protesting this. She lost three children, like a daughter and two sons. And I think more than that actually. I think three or four children. And she was constantly protesting against the government, saying, hey, what's going on? Y'all aren't helping me find my family. Y'all aren't bringing these people to justice. It's a whole nother story. But yeah, she was killed in the streets. And the one I did my episode over, she died at home. So two different things. And I commented back on that YouTube uh, comment because I was like, hey, you're not wrong. I'm not wrong. Just two different stories. That's it. Anyways, back to see again, my brain just has to go somewhere else. These are called yeah. So again, I didn't even finish saying what skinwalkers were. So from the research I did, a lot of the medicine men were able to have, how we have them depicted wearing the animal skins, the wolf, the coyote, the eagle feathers, all that stuff. The medicine men were said to be able to turn into these animals, which is where we get skinwalkers from. And they're not evil creatures. Are some evil? Yes, they were just medicine men, and we have our own version of that too, which are called nawals or naguls depending on which creator you listen to, because there's another creator that I had an argument with about a year and a half ago about this, because he said that, what was it? Lechusas are nawals. I was like, no, lechusas are witches that turn into owls. Nawals are medicine men that turn into owls. And he swore up and down I was wrong. I ignored him. I was like, look, dude, whatever. He has a bigger following than me. So I'm like, look, I'm not going to argue with you. You got a way bigger following than me. If you say you're right, I guess I'm wrong. I guess, thousands of years of information that I read on is just wrong. So I gave up. I was like, whatever, dude. But I will argue with people. I do not care. I'm gonna bring him into this too. I'm gonna tag him in the next video that I post about these things. I'm not. I might. I don't know. Maybe before TikTok gets banned, I'll tag him a bunch of times and argue with them, and then let it get banned and have just disappear forever. Anyways, let's get back to it. I get distracted so easily. It's believed that to discover your guide, you have to escape to nature. So you have to go out into the woods, go out into the desert, go out into the forest, away from everybody, fall asleep. And the first animal that comes to you is your spirit guide. And like I said, some of those spirit guides are big animals. If a jaguar comes at you in the middle while you're asleep, you're meeting him really soon, right? He's going to guide you real quick. So let's get back to it. Back to alebrijes. They can be found in the state of Oaxaca. That's where two of the most famous alebrije artists reside. They are so famous and good at their craft that they were asked to create a large alebrije for Rockefeller Center for Mexico Week in 2021. So we have covered a lot tonight. Now you can celebrate this holiday starting up to 4 days earlier due to the ever evolving nature of the holiday. So Dia de los Muertos is not just November 1st, November 2nd. It starts 4 days earlier. Again, it's an ever evolving holiday that involves everybody. Everybody. Don't make me do the deep voice. I got it queued up right now. I can do the scary voice. Anyways, I do. I got my stream deck set up so I can do voices. Distractions. On the first day, you honor those that have died in accidents, car accidents, home accidents. It's just an accident, accidental deaths. The second day is for those that have drowned. The third day is for the forgotten and lonely spirits. And the fourth day is for the angelitos, which are the souls of the children that have passed. Now that's a hard one for me. By the next day, it should be November 1st, which is Dia de los Muertos. This day represents Dia de los Inocentes, for the souls of adults. And to round it out, on November 2nd, this day is the day that was made famous in the movie Coco. This is the day for spirits of adult ancestors and friends. November 1st is the souls of the adults in your family. And then after that, it's for everyone else. Recently, people have been at it, everyone else, right? So everybody. Recently, people have been adding their pets with the day for the children. Like I said, this holiday or celebration, depending on how you see it, is an ever evolving. I personally believe that due to its roots and the nature of the time that it is celebrated in, since it coincides with other major celebrations throughout the world, that this day is not only for the Mexican people, but for everyone and anyone that wants to celebrate it, as long as it's done with respect. I've kind of jumped all over the place with this one, but all the information is here on this holiday or celebration. I hope you take all this in and the next year set up an ofrenda the proper way and honor your loved ones, whether it be friends, family, or pets. Don't let anyone stop you. Just remember, with respect, and also on this day, you're Mexican. You're also, if that's the issue, fine. I, Joe Rios, the host of Spooky Mysteries, make you an honorary Mexican. Boom. Here's a shot of tequila, and I got a chihuahua if you want. Whatever makes you Mexican. If people are going to gatekeep, then fine. You're an honorary Mexican for the day. I'm not going to let that happen, right? Sorry, I get so fired up about these things because, as the saying goes, a Mexican is born donde le da las pinche ganas, which means a Mexican is born wherever the hell we want to be. So, like I said, there's even an artist on like TikTok and Twitter X that said that they're Mexican, but people are like, "Wait, you're from Portugal?" I'm like, "No, she's Mexican. I'm not going to get into that." So, stay spooky, everybody, and until next time, bye. That was a long one, wasn't it? Later, guys.